Lucas Torres, a renowned investigative journalist known for his determination and talent, was having a typical day at his newsroom when he received a phone call that piqued his curiosity. The voice on the other end was from an anonymous informant, an acquaintance of an acquaintance, speaking with an almost desperate urgency. "You need to look into the recent medical emergency cases," said the voice, which sounded muffled, as if speaking from a dark place. "There's something strange going on, but no one seems to notice." Without knowing exactly what to expect, Lucas decided to dive into the case. With a keen eye and a notebook always at hand, he began investigating the city's emergency medical records. Endless lists of cases appeared on his computer screen, each marked with seemingly common symptoms: high fever, intense pain, and nausea. But as he analyzed the details, Lucas noticed a peculiar pattern. Although the cases were routine, there was something unusual about how the patients were being treated. He found a small note in one of the reports mentioning a new treatment protocol, a kind of recent medication that seemed to be at the root of all the symptoms. Intrigued, Lucas decided to visit the local emergency room where the cases had been recorded. The hospital was in constant frenzy, but he managed to speak with some doctors and nurses. They seemed reluctant to discuss details. Their responses were evasive, and a sense of discomfort hung in the air. The day was beginning to darken when Lucas met Dr. Sofia Almeida, a doctor who had been mentioned in several of the reports he had reviewed. Sofia was known for her competence and exceptional care for her patients. When she entered the break room, her eyes revealed a mix of exhaustion and determination. "Are you the journalist investigating the emergency cases?" Sofia asked, her voice laden with a restlessness that Lucas couldn't ignore. "Yes, that's me," Lucas replied. "There seems to be something unusual about the recent cases. What can you tell me about it?" Sofia hesitated for a moment, looking at the papers and reports scattered on the table. "There are things you need to know, but I can't discuss them here. Let's meet elsewhere. I have a lead that could change everything." With that, she stood up and prepared to leave. Lucas followed her, his heart beating faster, as the feeling that he was about to uncover something significant began to intensify. He didn't yet know how deep and complex the mystery he was about to unravel would be. The simple call from an anonymous informant was about to lead Lucas down a path filled with secrets, dangers, and revelations that could change not only his life but the lives of many others. Lucas and Dr. Sofia met at a small, discreet cafe in the city center, away from curious eyes and the hospital chaos. The place was almost empty, and the soft light from the table lamps created an intimate and almost conspiratorial atmosphere. Sofia, with a worried expression, handed Lucas a folder full of documents. Her fingers trembled slightly as she passed the material to him, and Lucas sensed that there was something deeply unsettling about these papers. "These are the records of the patients who were treated with the new medication," Sofia began, her voice low and restrained. "As you can see, they all exhibit similar symptoms, but the way they were treated varies." Lucas examined the documents carefully. He saw medical reports, prescriptions, and treatment notes, all interspersed with charts and numbers that looked like a tangle of clinical data. The pattern was beginning to emerge clearly. The patients had been treated with an experimental medication, and in several cases, the treatments were resulting in unexpected and severe side effects. But there was more. On a loose sheet, Lucas found a handwritten note, in elegant and careful script, that seemed to have been written by Sofia. "The new drug may be causing an adverse reaction in some patients, but we don't have enough evidence to alert the public." Lucas's sense of unease grew. There was a note of concern in Sofia's words, and he knew something was being hidden. But what exactly? As he analyzed the documents, Lucas asked some questions, and Sofia began to reveal small details that helped piece together the puzzle. "I have noticed that many patients who received the medication are coming back with new symptoms. Additionally, some of them have reported a feeling of extreme fatigue and mental confusion." Sofia pulled out a data sheet and pointed to a table with statistics on the drug's efficacy. "What worries me is that, despite the severe side effects, the pharmaceutical company continues to promote the drug as safe and effective. The reality is very different. Lucas felt a wave of frustration as he realized there was a clear disconnect between what was being reported and the reality faced by the patients. Each line, each number in the documents seemed to tell a story of negligence and deceit. The environment around him seemed to disappear as Lucas delved deeper into the papers. The growing unease in his chest signaled that he was only scratching the surface of something much more sinister. He felt that he was about to uncover a monumental scandal, but he didn't yet know the extent of what he was about to find. The conversation with Sophia left Lucas more determined than ever to move forward, to uncover the truth, and to expose what was being hidden. The mystery of the medication and the potential impact on the patients' lives were beginning to intertwine into a more complex and dangerous plot than he could have imagined. The cafe was starting to empty, and the lights from the lamps began to dim, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Lucas and Dr. Sophia had delved deep into their discussions, but the sense of urgency continued to grow. The crucial lead was about to surface, and Lucas knew time was running out. Sophia, visibly tired, pulled a small cardboard box from the bottom of her bag. With a furtive glance around, she placed it on the table and carefully opened it. Inside the box were a series of files and folders labeled with the names of different patients and specific dates. "There's something you need to see," Sophia said, her voice tense. "I found something that might be the key to understanding what's going on." Lucas frowned as he looked at the documents. Among them was a report that seemed out of place, a loose sheet with handwritten notes and confidentiality stamps. He flipped through the pages, which detailed a specific event that occurred weeks before the patient's health problems began. "I managed to access records from an internal meeting at the pharmaceutical company," Sophia explained. "It appears there was a discussion about a specific batch of the experimental medication, and something in that meeting doesn't match what was presented publicly." Lucas read the notes carefully. "It says here that the batch had a significant alteration in the formula, and that it was withdrawn for further investigation. But there was no communication to the public or the doctors." Sophia pointed to a specific passage that seemed even more alarming, a reference to a critical situation that was handled secretly. The meeting mentions an emergency situation involving a series of severe side effects that were hidden to avoid a scandal. Lucas's heart raced. He understood that he was facing something far more serious than he initially imagined. The way the pharmaceutical company handled the issue, keeping everything secret, raised questions about the integrity and ethics involved. Sophia, with a look of determination mixed with desperation, continued, "I'm certain these documents are proof that the pharmaceutical company knew the risks. They tried to cover it up to avoid a public backlash. The question is, how much more have they hidden?" Lucas looked at the documents, his mind racing. The crucial lead wasn't just a revelation of information, but a window into a broader scheme of deception and negligence. He felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. If what was in the documents was revealed, it could expose not just a failure of responsibility, but a true conspiracy of corruption. Sophia watched Lucas with an expression of hope and apprehension. "We have to act fast. If this gets out the right way, we can expose the truth before it's too late." With those words, Lucas felt that he was about to take the next step on a journey that promised not only to reveal the truth, but also to confront powerful forces willing to do anything to keep their secrets buried. The evening in the city was starting to paint the sky with shades of orange and purple when Lucas decided to follow the lead Sophia had given him. He headed to the location mentioned in the documents, an old research clinic now closed and abandoned, but still registered as a branch of the involved pharmaceutical company. The clinic was surrounded by a barbed wire fence, and through an opening in the fence, Lucas could see the weather-worn buildings and overgrown vegetation overtaking the gardens. The place looked like a suspense movie set, gloomy and silent, with a sense that something was about to be revealed. Lucas stealthily entered through the opening and walked toward the main building, his heart beating with a mix of anxiety and anticipation. The windows were covered with dirty curtains, and the doors were locked, but he found a small side entrance that seemed to have been forced open recently. He pushed the door, which creaked as it opened, and stepped into the darkness. The interior was full of dust and disarray. Medical disposables and rusty equipment were scattered everywhere. Lucas turned on a flashlight, and the light revealed a room that looked like it had been abandoned in a hurry. On a table in the center of the room, he found a pile of documents covered in dust, strewn about as if someone had left in a rush. Lucas approached and began to sift through the papers, his breathing quickening as he found more records related to the experimental medication. Some documents were partially burned, but others were legible, revealing discussions about the drug's efficacy and notes on unexpected side effects. That's when he found a report that made him stop. It was a list of patients who had participated in the drug trials, accompanied by notes on undisclosed adverse effects. Among the names, Lucas found one that seemed familiar, the name of a former college friend of Sophia, who had mysteriously disappeared a few months earlier. Lucas's mind started racing. This friend's disappearance seemed connected to the medication issues. There was also a detailed chart showing an alarming upward curve in adverse events following the administration of a specific batch of the medication, the same batch mentioned in previous documents. As he examined the papers, Lucas heard a noise. He turned quickly, the flashlight revealing shadows that seemed to move. Fear began to set in, and he realized someone might be watching the place or, worse, trying to stop his investigation. The sound of muffled footsteps in the hallway made Lucas hide behind a pile of boxes. His heart pounded as he tried to identify the source of the sound. Each step seemed to echo in his chest, and he wondered if he was about to face something much more dangerous than he had imagined. Finally, the footsteps stopped, and the room returned to silence. Lucas stood up, his body tense, and continued to examine the documents. The mystery was deepening, and the connection between the medication, Sophia's friend's disappearance, and the hidden evidence was starting to unravel. He knew he was only beginning to understand the complexity of the case, and that the answers he sought might be much darker and more dangerous than he had anticipated. Lucas was in the newsroom, surrounded by piles of papers and computer screens, when his phone rang. It was Sophia, and her voice was filled with urgency and panic. "Lucas, we need to talk. Now." Without hesitation, he headed to their agreed meeting place, a small riverside park where they often met to discuss the investigation away from prying eyes. The park was deserted, the sunlight fading, and the sky starting to turn dark. Sophia was waiting, her face pale and her eyes showing growing concern. As soon as Lucas arrived, she pulled him to a more secluded area where they could talk without the risk of being overheard. "I tried to talk to my editor about the situation," Sophia began, her voice trembling, "but they told me it's a common case of side effects and there's no need to alarm the public. They said your investigation is getting out of hand and should be stopped." Lucas felt a chill run down his spine. What Sophia was saying indicated there was significant pressure to silence the truth. "And do you believe that?" "Of course not," Sophia exclaimed. "I've seen the effects firsthand and I know something is very wrong. But when I mentioned this to my editor, he informed me that the pharmaceutical company had already made arrangements to cover up any problems." Lucas's face contorted in frustration. "They're trying to cover this up. What about my own team? I've already started receiving subtle threats. My editors are pressuring me to drop the investigation." Sophia took a deep breath, her gaze fixed on Lucas. "We can't stop now. If there's any chance to expose the truth, we have to keep going. But it's risky, could be dangerous." Lucas felt a sense of despair. What he was uncovering was too big to ignore, but also too dangerous to face alone. He was beginning to grasp the magnitude of the corruption and power that were against them. Their conversation was interrupted by a message Lucas received on his phone. It was a subtle but clear warning. "You are getting involved in something you can't control. Stop the investigation or face the consequences." Sophia read the message, and her face grew even more serious. "They're trying to intimidate you. That means you're getting close to something they don't want you to uncover." Lucas looked out at the horizon, the city in the distance now shrouded in a blanket of shadows. The feeling of being in a battle against powerful and dark forces was becoming an increasingly palpable reality. "I'm not going to stop," Lucas said, his voice firm despite the growing fear. "If there's any truth to be found, we'll find it, no matter the cost." Sophia nodded, her resolute gaze reflecting the same determination. "We'll keep going, but we need to be more cautious. They won't stop at anything to protect their secrets. The weight of their decision was clearly upon them, and the truth they sought was becoming ever closer, but also more enveloped in dangers and obstacles. Lucas knew he was facing a monumental fight, and the road ahead would be full of challenges and risks that could change not only his life, but the lives of many others. The night was silent and cold when Lucas decided to visit the testing clinic mentioned in the documents. He had spent hours analyzing records and talking with Sophia, but there was something more he needed to understand, a personal connection that seemed to elude logical reason. The clinic, now in a state of advanced decay, looked even more frightening under the moonlight. Lucas, armed with a flashlight and a camera, re-entered the abandoned building. The air was thick with dust and a musty smell, but he headed straight to the office he had previously found. He rummaged through piles of papers, searching for more information about Sophia's colleague, whose name he had found among the patients. His thoughts were focused on a connection between the disappearance and what he had discovered about the experimental medication. Then, Lucas came across a file hidden behind a fallen drawer. Inside the file, he found a series of emails and letters addressed to a Dr. Eduardo Campos, a name that immediately sounded familiar. Lucas recalled that Eduardo had been a former college friend of Sophia, someone who, as far as he knew, had disappeared under mysterious circumstances months earlier. The documents described Eduardo as one of the clinic's leading researchers. He had worked with the new medication and was expressing growing concerns about the adverse effects he had observed. The messages detailed his increasing frustration with the lack of response from the pharmaceutical company and the pressure he was facing to silence his findings. Among the documents, Lucas found a handwritten letter from Eduardo to Sophia. The letter was marked with a tone of desperation and urgency, detailing his concerns about the medication's safety and his decision to take the case to a higher level, outside the clinic, to avoid a cover-up. If you receive this letter, know that I am doing everything I can to expose the truth. The medication is causing irreparable harm, and the pharmaceutical company is determined to keep it secret. Please be careful. Lucas felt a pang in his chest. The discovery that Eduardo had tried to alert Sophia and the direct connection to his disappearance brought a new perspective to the investigation. It was more than just a matter of reporting misconduct. It was a matter of personal and professional justice for Sophia and now, for him as well. The thought that someone had risked everything to expose the truth, only to disappear without a trace, added a new level of urgency to his mission. Lucas began to grasp the gravity of what was involved, not just in terms of a journalistic story, but in terms of human lives and personal integrity. He decided he needed to delve deeper into this personal connection and reveal what had happened to Eduardo. The responsibility of continuing the fight Eduardo had started was now clearly in his hands. Sophia, upon learning of the connection, would be equally determined to find answers and justice for her former colleague and all the victims of the medication. The mystery was deepening, and Lucas and Sophia's personal connection to the case was becoming a powerful driving force in their quest for the truth. The sense that they were about to unearth a deeply buried secret was about to become more intense and more personal than they had ever imagined. Lucas was back at his desk in the newsroom, surrounded by piles of documents and the dim light of his monitor. The discovery about Sophia's colleague had ignited a flame of determination within him. But there was still something missing from the puzzle, a lead he needed to follow to reveal the true extent of the scandal. He decided to dive into the pharmaceutical company's financial records. He spent hours analyzing profit reports, investments, and expenses, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary until an older financial report caught his attention. There was a significant investment in a research fund that appeared to be directed towards a specific medication project. Lucas found a reference to a new medicinal technologies development fund, and the amount allocated was exorbitant. The document indicated that the pharmaceutical company had financed research that seemed to offer little immediate return but aligned with periods of intense activity and changes in the development of experimental medications. The most intriguing fact emerged when Lucas found a series of discrete bank transfers to offshore accounts, registered under names of shell companies. The transactions were conducted in a way to obscure their true nature, but one of them caught Lucas's eye. A large sum transferred to a consulting firm with direct ties to the pharmaceutical company's executives. Beginning to understand the bigger picture, Lucas looked into the consulting firm. He discovered that behind the facade of a legitimate business were some of the most powerful executives from the pharmaceutical company, including people he had seen mentioned in the clinic's internal documents. The final piece of the puzzle came to light when Lucas found a list of emails indicating secret meetings between these executives and some local politicians. The content of the emails revealed discussions about how the pharmaceutical company was manipulating test results and ensuring that any issues were suppressed before reaching the public. Lucas felt a wave of outrage as he read the emails. The pharmaceutical company was not only neglecting patient safety, but was also manipulating information and corrupting institutions to protect its financial interests. The corporate involvement was much deeper and more dangerous than he had imagined. The discovery that the pharmaceutical company was not only aware of the problems with its medication but actively engaged in covering them up and manipulating public opinion added a new dimension to the case. What seemed to be a manufacturing error or an isolated problem was, in fact, a complex and well-orchestrated operation to protect its profits and reputation at any cost. Lucas knew he now had compelling evidence of a scheme involving corruption and corporate influence. The truth he was about to reveal would not only expose the pharmaceutical company's misconduct, but also challenge the integrity of the institutions involved. With an understanding of the corporate involvement, Lucas prepared for the next phase of the investigation, knowing that what he was about to face would be a battle against powerful and entrenched forces. The path to exposing the truth was becoming more dangerous but also more crucial than ever. He had just finished reviewing the documents about the pharmaceutical company's corporate involvement and was beginning to prepare his material for publication. The plan was to expose the truth to the public and make the company face the consequences of its actions. But as he was reviewing the final emails he had collected, something caught his attention, an email marked urgent that he had previously overlooked. The sender was one of the key figures involved with the pharmaceutical company, and the subject was update on the investigation. Lucas opened the email with a growing sense of unease. The content of the email was a direct order to dismantle and redirect the investigation efforts. But what made him stop dead in his tracks was the email signature, which included an attachment with internal details from the pharmaceutical company, information that included a list of journalists and other prominent figures who were being monitored. With a growing sense of apprehension, Lucas discovered that his own name was on the list, alongside several other journalists and even some politicians. There was also a note indicating necessary action to neutralize the most incisive investigators. It was at this moment that Lucas received an unexpected phone call. It was Sophia, her voice tense and hurried. "Lucas, you won't believe what I found. They're doing more than just trying to cover up the truth. They're planning something bigger, something involving direct manipulation of our investigation." Sophia explained that, while reviewing the documents, she had discovered a detailed plan to create a distraction, a major press conference to announce a positive breakthrough in the medication, designed to divert media and public attention from the real crisis. As the conversation continued, Lucas noticed something even more alarming. He had received a new message on his phone, a photo of his house with the message, "Back off or face the consequences." Fear surged within him, a feeling that he was being watched and that his safety was compromised. The twist came with the arrival of a message from an anonymous informant. The message revealed that the pharmaceutical company was planning a coordinated effort to discredit Lucas and Sophia, including a direct attack on their credibility and the fabrication of false evidence to cast doubt on their findings. Lucas was in shock. The plan he was about to reveal was more complex and dangerous than he had imagined. The pharmaceutical company was not only trying to cover up its mistakes, it was preparing to destroy the credibility of anyone who threatened to expose the truth. He and Sophia, now aware that they were direct targets of a disinformation and intimidation campaign, needed to act quickly. The forces they were facing were not only powerful but also willing to go to any lengths to protect their interests. With the pharmaceutical company's plan unfolding before them and the threats becoming increasingly real, Lucas and Sophia faced a race against time. They needed to act with cunning and courage to confront the twist that was about to define not only the future of the investigation but also their own lives. Lucas was in a small emergency apartment he had rented under a false name. The place was cluttered with scattered papers, evidence that they needed to organize and protect. Sophia, on the phone, was coordinating with a trusted media source to ensure that the information would leak before the pharmaceutical company could complete its distraction plan. "We have to speed everything up," Sophia said, her voice tense. "The press conference is scheduled for tomorrow, and they plan to use it to divert attention. If we're not quick, everything we have will be ignored." Lucas took a deep breath, reviewing the files and preparing an urgent press release. He knew he needed to be meticulous. Any mistake could be fatal. He was ready to get the truth to the public, but the pressure was immense, and the threats they had received had become a constant worry. As night fell, Sophia arrived at the apartment, carrying a folder full of documents and a look of determination. "Here's the plan," she explained as Lucas helped her prepare the material. "We'll release the press statement across multiple media platforms simultaneously. We need to make sure the truth reaches as many people as possible before the conference begins." The two worked in silence, the tension palpable in the air. Every word, every piece of data, and every detail was crucial. The pharmaceutical company was preparing an elaborate presentation to divert attention, and Lucas and Sophia knew their only chance was to create an impact so significant that it couldn't be suppressed. As they sent out the press releases and monitored media responses, a growing sense of anxiety took over. At any moment, the pharmaceutical company could try to counterattack, and the danger was real. The threats had become more tangible, and the feeling of being watched intensified when a black car repeatedly appeared near the apartment. The fight for the truth was not just a journalistic battle. It was a battle for survival. Lucas and Sophia were now throwing everything they had against an enemy that wouldn't hesitate to use all its weapons to protect its secrets. The media was starting to notice, and the pressure was mounting. The first headlines began to emerge, highlighting the controversy and serious allegations against the pharmaceutical company. When the press conference began, the pharmaceutical company launched an aggressive campaign, promoting a revolutionary breakthrough in medication and trying to shift the focus to its supposed successes. But amid the event, the impact of Lucas and Sophia's press releases started to be felt. The public and media began to question the authenticity of the pharmaceutical company's claims, and the scandal began to take on a life of its own. Lucas and Sophia watched with tension, knowing that the future of the investigation and their own lives were at stake. They had unleashed the truth into the world, but the path to securing justice was just beginning. The fight for the truth had turned into a battle that demanded courage, strategy, and unwavering determination to confront a corrupt and powerful system. Lucas adjusted his laptop, and Sophia made the final tweaks to the material they had prepared. They were about to publish an explosive article and a documentary video that, together, had the potential to shake the pharmaceutical company to its core. It was a mix of testimonies, leaked documents, and irrefutable evidence. The moment of truth arrived. Lucas clicked the publish button, and the article appeared on the front page of major news websites. The headline was direct and shocking: "The Hidden Truth: How the Pharmaceutical Company Manipulated Medication and Put Lives at Risk." Instantly, traffic surged, and the site began pumping the news to a growing audience. The video, shown simultaneously, started with dark images of laboratories and secret documents, interspersed with emotional testimonies from people affected by the medication. The camera focused on the heartfelt reactions of patients and former employees, revealing the devastating consequences of the pharmaceutical company's misconduct. Sophia, with a resolute expression, narrated the details while the footage displayed the evidence gathered during the investigation. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The media was in a frenzy, news channels broadcasted the story on a loop, and social media exploded with discussions and shares. Journalists began asking tough questions to the pharmaceutical company, and official statements were quickly discredited as more details emerged. Meanwhile, Lucas and Sophia watched with a mix of relief and tension. They knew they had done what seemed impossible. They had exposed the truth and put the pharmaceutical company on the defensive. But they also knew the battle was far from over. The forces they were up against wouldn't be easily subdued and might retaliate with all the weapons at their disposal. The major exposé created a media frenzy and led to a series of additional investigations. Public pressure forced authorities to act, and politicians began to get involved. demanding a comprehensive review of the pharmaceutical company's practices. People were finally becoming aware of the magnitude of the crisis, and the truth was starting to prevail. Lucas and Sophia, though still nervous and vigilant, felt a moment of victory. They had taken a crucial step toward bringing justice and exposing the corruption deeply embedded in the industry. But the fight was far from over. The real challenge would be to ensure that changes occurred and that those responsible were held accountable. The exposé marked a crucial turning point in the investigation and in the lives of the protagonists, showing the world what it meant to fight for the truth against a formidable adversary. They had stood up against a corrupt system and demonstrated that courage and determination could illuminate even the darkest secrets. The storm they had unleashed was finally beginning to calm. The big exposé had made the impact they had hoped for, but what remained now was the conclusion of the battle they had started. Lucas's phone rang with the news that the authorities had finally issued a statement, announcing a formal investigation against the pharmaceutical company. The statement was firm, promising full transparency and accountability. The sense of accomplishment was palpable, but there was still a certain weight in the air. The work was far from over, and the road to justice was still long. The cafe was quiet, except for the distant murmur of the city and the occasional sound of a passing car. Sophia looked at Lucas and said, "I never imagined we'd face something so big, but we did what we needed to do." Her voice was laden with a mix of relief and exhaustion. She had spent sleepless nights and faced personal threats to get to this point. Lucas, with a thoughtful expression, gazed at the horizon. "Yes, we did. But there are still many people who need to be heard and many changes that need to be made. What we started here is just the beginning." As the sun continued to rise, the reactions to the exposé became clearer. The pharmaceutical company was facing increasing pressure to reform its practices and compensate the victims. But Lucas and Sophia knew that the real fight was to ensure that those responsible were held accountable and that the industry was reformed to protect patient welfare. The outcome wasn't a happy ending in the traditional sense. There was no complete closure or return to normalcy. It was a new phase of struggle and hope. People were beginning to rally around the cause, pushing for changes and demanding justice. The personal impact on Lucas and Sophia was also profound. They had risked everything, faced dangers, and gone through an intense period of uncertainty. But in the end, they had achieved something significant. The outcome provided an opportunity for reflection on the nature of truth, courage, and resilience. As days went by, Lucas and Sophia continued to witness the unfolding of their investigation. They were frequently approached by people affected by the medication, who came to thank them and share their own stories of struggle. These encounters reinforced the importance of the work they had done and the ongoing need to fight for justice. The conclusion of their story was a mix of accomplishment and introspection. The truth had been revealed, but the journey to ensure that real change occurred was just beginning. Lucas and Sophia knew that, although the main battle had been won, there was much more to be done to ensure that justice was complete and lasting. In the end, their story became a powerful reminder that truth, even when obscured by powerful forces, always finds a way to the light, and that sometimes the courage and determination of a few can inspire change and bring hope to many. Click on the video being recommended to you now.